Hello and welcome to week 4. We finished our central panel of the blanket now with this lovely watercolour effect, and we're now going to work on 4 panels on the outside of the blanket, and I promised you there would be no sewing, and there is no sewing. They are crocheted directly onto the blanket, and this week we are going to be learning to make mini bobbles to give this ermine effect, and then you will be joining your little mini jewels, and we'll be joining them along in this gilt band, and we're going to be learning continuous join. So you'll need your little granny squares this week with all the ends sewn in. So let's get started. So as I said, now we are working in rows, so we are creating the panels on the 4 sides of the blanket. And I am going to be working a sample to show you how to work the rows. And I've made this small piece, and this is to represent rows 46 and 47 of the blanket, and they are the last 2 rounds of the blanket that we were working on last week. So this little sample is just to represent the corner of those 2 rounds. So this is now row 1. So we've finished with rounds, we're working in rows. Don't forget to check your pattern to make sure you know which way up your blanket's going to be. And this one is worked with the right side up. And in the corner of round 47, I'm going to rejoin cream by pulling up a loop, chaining 2, and I'm going to make 1 more stitch in the same space, so that counts as 2 trebles, and then I'm going to treble crochet in each stitch across. And I'm just making a sample, but when you make yours you are going to crochet all along the side, 1 stitch, 1 treble crochet in every stitch, and when you get to the corner at the other end you're going to make 2 treble crochets in that corner space. So I'm just making a sample, but you've made treble crochets to the end of your row with 2 treble crochets in the last chain space, and then you are going to chain 1. This does not count as a stitch. Turn, and then this is row 2, which is mini bobbles, and we're going to start with a double crochet in the first stitch because that chain does not count as a stitch, and then 3 more double crochet, and we are going to change to purple in the last stitch before we need to use it. So this is my 4th double crochet stitch, so I'm going to pull up a loop, and instead of yarn over and finishing the stitch in the normal way, I'm going to bring the cream yarn to the front, and this is really important because this is what's going to stop your yarns twisting together. So I've got it trapped under my thumb here, and then I'm going to add the purple, and I'm going to do this with a loop. So loop over the hook, and I'm going to finish the stitch by pulling through a loop of purple. So now we've changed from cream to purple. I've got my cream yarn at the front, and I'm going to bring the tail of the purple yarn towards me as well. You don't want to crochet over this tail, you want it right out of the way. So now I'm going to make my mini bobble in the next stitch, so this next stitch along. And to do this, I'm going to yarn over, insert the hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So you now have 2 loops left on your hook, and I'm going to do this again. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So you now have 3 loops on your hook, and then one more time, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So we now have 4 loops on the hook, and we're now going to finish off the bobble. So I'm going to drop my purple yarn to the back, and this is important because this is what's stopping your yarns from twisting together. They're separate. I'm going to take my cream yarn, bring it in front of my purple stitches, yarn over and pull the cream yarn through all the stitches on the hook. So now we double crochet into the next stitch, and I'm doing my double crochet over the purple yarn. So the purple yarn is laying across the top of the stitches, and the cream stitch is trapping the purple yarn inside. So there's my double crochet, and that's my first of 6 double crochets. So there are 6 double crochets in between bobbles. So I'll show you the bobble again. So that's 1 double crochet, 2, 3, and I'm still trapping that purple yarn inside, 4, 5, and this is my 6th stitch, and we're changing back to purple in this stitch because it's the last stitch before we need to use the purple. So I'm going to start the stitch in cream, and then same as before, I'm going to bring the cream yarn towards me, trap it under my thumb. So our yarns are still separate, they're not twisted together. I'm going to yarn over and finish the stitch in purple, and then yarn over and make the bobble in the next stitch. So that's pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops again, and a 3rd time. So now we drop the purple yarn behind, we bring the cream yarn in front and over the hook, pull through all the loops on the hook, oh, nearly, pull through all the loops on the hook, and then finish the stitch with the double crochet. And again, I'm trapping that purple yarn inside. And this is worked on the wrong side, but the bobbles will pop out on the right side. And then you're going to repeat that all the way along. So that's 6 double crochet stitches, changing to purple in the last stitch before you need it, make a bobble, and at the end of that row you will have 21 bobbles. So we're at the end of row 2, and row 2 has 3 double crochet stitches after the last bobble, and once you've finished your last bobble you can snip off the purple, and we will sew that tail in later. So the next row, which is row 3, is treble crochet. So we're going to start the row by chaining 2, and as always a chain 2 counts as a stitch. So we are not going to make a stitch in the base of that chain 2 here because this counts as a stitch. So we're going to work in the next stitch along. So treble crochet, and then treble crochet in the next stitch, and then the next stitch is the purple, and if you look along the top of the row you can see that it's a V shape just the same as the other stitches, exactly the same. So we're going to make 1 treble crochet in the top of each bobble under both loops in the usual way, and 1 treble crochet in each cream stitch. And to help you, you are crocheting 1 purple and then 6 cream. So I'm going to pop my treble crochet into the top of the bobble and then just treble crochet along the rest of the row into each stitch. And you can see that we're now back on the right side of the blanket, and our little mini bobbles are popping out on the front. So we worked them on the back and they're popping out on the front. I'm just going to whiz along. I'm in the last few stitches of the row. 1, 2, 3, 4. And our next row, which is row 4, is granny stitch again. So I'm going to chain 2, and this counts as our first treble. And then I'm going to skip 2 stitches, but remember that because this counts as a stitch, we're going to skip this stitch at the base as well. So skip 2 more, so that's 1, 2, and then 3 trebles in the next stitch. And then skip 2 more stitches and 3 trebles in the next stitch, and you're just going to repeat that along until you get to the end of the row. And at the end of the row you will skip 2 stitches and make 1 treble crochet in the last stitch. So I've fastened off row 4, and I'm now going to start joining our little mini jewels that we've been making over the last few weeks. And we're going to join them using a technique called continuous join, and I absolutely love this. It's so versatile and it's really, really quick to work. And we're going to join them along this row of granny clusters here. Change to your 3.5mm hook, because this row tends to be a little bit bulkier than other rows because you're working stitches on top of one another. By going down to a slightly smaller hook, it will ensure that your row is the same width as the ones below and above. So we're going to start with our first jewel, and in the pattern it tells you which order to join them in, and it's a repeating pattern and it's the same all the way round. So this time I've got the side facing towards me. So if this was the blanket would be here in front of me, and I've got my panel facing towards me, and I've only got my section here, my small test piece, but this would be the bottom right hand corner of your panel with your blanket facing away from you, and this is where we're going to start joining. So we're going to take our first little mini jewel, pull up a loop in the corner of gilt and chain 2, and then we're going to make 2 half treble crochets into the same corner space. So 1 half treble, 2 half trebles. So that chain 2 counts as our first half treble, and then we have 2 more half trebles. And then we're going to yarn over and make 3 more half trebles. And this is the fun part. We're now going to join this onto the side of the blanket, and we're going to do this with a slip stitch. Now, when you make granny squares, you have 2 chains at the corner normally. So we're going to make our first chain in the normal way, and our second chain we're going to replace with a slip stitch, and we're going to make that slip stitch into this first space between the first treble and the first group of 3 trebles. So I'm going to pop my hook from top to bottom and slip stitch into that space. So that's my first slip stitch, and it is now joined to the blanket. I'm going to make 3 half trebles, and that finishes our corner. And we're using half trebles because it's a slightly shorter stitch, and for the same reason as going down a hook size, we don't want this section to be too bulky and distort the blanket. So I've got my 3 half trebles, and now I'm going to join it to the blanket again with another slip stitch in the next space. So my sets of half trebles are mirroring my trebles on the blanket. And then we've got a corner to make. So that's 1, 2, 3 half trebles. Oh, no, it's not. 2, 3. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking she's going to say put a slip stitch in there. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to complete the corner and come back to that because we don't want to add any unnecessary bulk. So I'm going to make my corner. So that's another 3 half trebles. And then 3 more half trebles. I'll stop and show you what this looks like. So here we go. It looks like 3 sides of a granny square with a little bit not joined. So now we're going to add the next one. And to do this, we yarn over, and then we take the next little jewel and we make 3 half treble crochets in the corner space. I'll show you that again. So yarn over, hold the jewel in front, insert your hook, pull up a loop and make a half treble, and then 2 more half trebles in the same space. And this time we're going to turn the square round and we're going to join with a slip stitch in the previous square because we want them sitting next to one another. So hook top to bottom, pull up a loop and slip stitch. So then we have 3 more half trebles. 1, 2, 3. And this time we're going to join these corners and join both corners to the blanket. So first of all, we slip stitch into the space between trebles here. So we slip stitch and then 1 slip stitch into the blanket. So now both corners of this square are joined, and then we're just going to repeat. So we have 3 more half trebles, slip stitch into the blanket, three more half trebles. Now you might have noticed that I've changed to a knife grip here. I normally hold my hook like this, but I've switched, and that's just because I find it easier and more comfortable to do continuous join using a knife grip. So you might want to experiment with the different grips just to see what's most comfortable for you. So there we go, we've got our 3 trebles, and it's time to join another one. So yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 trebles into the corner, half trebles into the corner, rotate it round, slip stitch to join, and then we're just going to repeat exactly what we did before all the way along until all of your little jewels are joined along the panel. And this is so quick to do. Once you get the hang of where your stitches are going, that's going in between the trebles, you will find that they join in absolutely no time. You'll be flying through it. Okay, so there we have 2 completely joined little jewels. I'm going to carry on along the row, and when I get to the end, I'm going to show you how to come back along and fill in this top edge. So this is the last square of my sample piece. So I've got my 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch to join, and this time, because it's the last one on the row, we're going to join the corner rather than leaving it unjoined this time. So 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, and then a slip stitch to join in that very last space, and then I'm going to chain 1, and then we're going to work up this side and along the top. So 3 half trebles, and then 3 more half trebles in the next space, 1, 2, 3, and then chain 2 to form the corner, and 3 half trebles, so there's my little corner, and then 3 half trebles in the next space, and then I'm going to make a slip stitch in this space between sets of half trebles. So I'm just going to pop my hook into that space and slip stitch, and then 3 more half trebles, three half trebles again, and slip stitch again into that space between sets of half trebles. And you're just going to repeat this all the way along and you will see that that finishes off the tops of your little jewels. So now they look like granny squares with coloured centres. So I'm just going to finish my row. So one final slip stitch, and then I'm just going to finish off the last square. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to chain 2 and fasten off by popping my hook under both loops of the first half treble. So I'm going to fasten off snip, and pull through, and there are my little jewels joined in a row along the side of my side panel. So I hope you have fun with this week. The stitches are a little bit easier than the ones we've done before, and also it's a fun week because we're getting into the regal stuff that represents the coronation, and that's obviously what we're here for. So have a good week, and I will see you next week when we get to use this wonderful purple.